Welcome. Tonight on Bay Area Psychology, we examine hypnosis or hypnotherapy, a practice rarely understood by most of us and a topic which is certainly rich with stereotypes. In fact, I simply could not pass up this somnambulist clip from the German silent film made in 1919, The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. Culture has used hypnosis in one form or another, often as a healing art or a way to relieve pain. Tonight, we are fortunate to have marriage, family, child counselor Lynn Kennedy with us to demystify this intriguing topic. Welcome, Lynn. I'm glad you could be here.
Thank you, Mary. I'm delighted.
Oh, sorry to cut you off. I know you are also a registered nurse in addition to being a marriage and family counselor. So you probably are going to be able to talk about this at a variety of different levels.
Yes.
I thought we'd start out by talking about what hypnosis is and isn't. And as you noticed, I took a clip. One of the stereotypes is that sort of the hypnotherapist has total command over their subject, can make them quack like ducks. In this particular movie, the theory was that he used hypnosis to have his servant kill people. He'd put him in a trance and then he'd go out and kill people. So I thought you might want to tell us a little about what it really is.
Well, your clip captured the essence of some of the really strong myths about hypnosis and the misunderstandings about mind control and the fact that the hypnotist can turn somebody into a zombie and remove their will and so on and so forth. Your clip was superb in that respect. Of course, it is a myth and a misunderstanding, because if I had that much power, I can guarantee you I'd be a rich woman.
Okay.
In fact, the reality is quite different. People normally and naturally go into trance all the time.
Okay, so you, in fact, do not have the ability to take somebody into a trance if they don't wish to. I mean, tell us a little bit about this idea of suggestibility. I mean, one of the fears is that somehow you could put me in a trance and I don't know it.
Oh, no, not at all. It's very easy to learn when you're going into trance. For instance, oftentimes when people watch TV or a really good movie, they are going into trance. They react viscerally to what is on the screen, whether that's laughing at a joke or getting frightened or screaming at a scary part of the movie. So you can become very aware of when you're going into trance, and yes, you do have control over whether or not you decide to cooperate with the hypnotherapist and go into trance. The very first time I was introduced to hypnosis, I was 12 years old. It was a stage hypnosis who, in retrospect, was very, very good. He did a screening of the audience, which is very common with stage hypnosis. And at 12, I sat there and said, I'm not going into trance.
Okay. Okay, so you even at that point were able to say to yourself, I still have control over what's happening here.
Absolutely.
Okay. Have you encountered people that are more suggestible than others? I mean, is there a difference with people?
Very definitely. I think that the ability to go into trance is like many talents, that it runs on a continuum from people who really need to learn how to go into trance, all the way to folks who can go into trance very, very quickly, very, very easily, and very naturally. And so it runs a spectrum.
Okay. Well, you know, speaking of spectrums, I thought this might be a good place to take a look at our graphic. I have taken a description of levels of consciousness from Josie Hadley's book, Hypnosis for Change, which you may be familiar with.
Yes.
When she looks at this continuum, she says the first that we see is normal intellectual and reflexive response, which would be obviously we're awake. And then she says the next part is what's called daydreaming, or sort of a light trance. And it's a relaxation of our body, slow breathing and pulse, a direction of attention to an imagined activity. So those are the first two levels she talks about, that we're able to move from sort of our everyday moving around to daydreaming. Does that seem right to you?
Very definitely. In fact, what I explain to clients before I put them into trance is that everybody has experienced various levels of trance, and quite naturally and normally in their own life. Daydreaming being a very good example of whether you're sort of gazing out the window daydreaming or dreaming of your vacation with your eyes closed. Your attention is focused more inwardly, but you still are aware of what's going on. If need be, your attention can be turned outward again.
It reminds me of times where I know I've been startled when a business partner of mine will knock on my door and I'll be concentrating on something and kind of jump.
Yes, very definitely.
Okay, let's take a look at our next two levels. Let's see, the next one she suggests is that from daydreaming we might move into a moderate trance. Loss of awareness of our surroundings, an increased awareness of breathing and our heartbeat, an increased receptivity of senses, intensified imagery. Okay, so this sounds like at this level, this may be where somebody's really starting to do a therapeutic trance with you?
It certainly could be. Naturally, when people go to sleep at night, they go through this stage. This is the stage where the person is very relaxed. If they are not sure that they've locked the front door, they may lie there and sort of debate about whether or not they really want to get up and check the door or not, because they're so comfortably relaxed. Person may feel sort of comfortably heavy or sort of light and floating. The imagery may be quite vivid at this point, but again, the person is still quite able to, be alert if the need arises for any reason.
Okay, it's sort of like having one foot in and one foot out.
Right.
Okay.
And at this stage, in fact, this is what I teach clients when I work with them. If somebody has a predetermined suggestion that they want to give themselves, this is a great time to do it because they are in a very receptive state at this point.
Like what? I mean, what you mean? I could be laying there at that state and say to myself, I need to, have more energy tomorrow, or
absolutely, whatever you desire. I certainly did it in terms of being relaxed and comfortable on your program today.
Okay, so it works.
It works.
Okay. All right, let's take a look at the next level.
Okay.
Well, they suggest that next we look at a deep trance. We go. We have a further reduction of activity, limpness or stiffness of limbs, narrowing of attention, increased suggestibility, loss of auditory receptivity and environmental awareness, and a heightened function of the creative process. So it looks like at this place, when they talk about heightened suggestibility, this might be when when as a therapist you might be making suggestions from outside?
Well, actually, that's one of the myths about hypnosis, that you have to be in a deep somnambulistic trance in order for the suggestions to work.
Okay.
Yes, what you're describing is a more somnambulistic trance. It's a more sleep-like trance, in which there are some very distinctive changes, as you enumerated. But in fact, the depth of trance is not necessarily related to the effectiveness of taking in the suggestion. People can be in a very light trance and take in the suggestion just as easily as if they're in a deep trance.
Okay, so indeed, so if I had fears, for example, if I have control issues, hypnotherapy might still work if I'm not ready to go to that other level?
Oh,
Okay.
absolutely. In
Okay.
fact, it's relatively rare in doing hypnotherapy that I have people in a somnambulistic trance. It's usually in the first 2 stages that you described, in the lighter or the medium trance.
Okay. What's your feeling about why that is?
One of the things that I say to people, particularly the first time I do trance work with them, is that in fact people are going to be curious the first time it happens. They're going to want to know what I'm saying.
Okay.
There are definitely trust issues, you know. They're making sure that I'm not going to say anything that's against what they want to hear. And then the second time, because I usually tape a lot of the trance work I do with people, the second time when they listen to the tape at home, in fact, they go into a much deeper trance because they're comfortable, they're trusting me, they know what's going to happen, and they can let go and relax more.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you can't make a suggestion for us to do something if we don't want to do it.
No.
Okay, so my fear about, you know, the idea of making a fool of myself or
Right.
somehow you implanting some sort of weird thing
Right.
is not going to happen.
No, and I think you bring up a very important issue, and that is before hypnotherapy takes place, there should be a very good rapport between the therapist and the client. I think that the client very definitely should feel like they trust the therapist. Normally we're discussing beforehand what I'm going to do in hypnosis, in part because the client usually has come in with some sort of request, but at other times in the therapeutic process I may be suggesting that this would be a good place where hypnosis might be helpful.
Okay.
But I usually explain beforehand what I'm going to be doing, what the rationale is,
Okay.
so that in fact the client feels comfortable with the process in advance.
Okay.
That very definitely facilitates the trance process.
I would guess so.
Yeah.
I wanted, before we do our break, to hit the last level here in Josie Hadley's book. She talks about the very last level in our graphic as, of course, sleep, which is the suspension of voluntary exercise and severe reduction or absence of conscious thought. And I'm wondering, when we come back, we can talk more about how much conscious thought there still is, even at that deep level. Okay, so let's hold on to that thought. Sure. In the meantime, stay with us. When we return, we'll learn more about the uses of hypnotherapy.